What's good, Rip City? Brendan Slaughter here for you. The Indiana Hoosiers are... What's good, Rip City? Brendan Slaughter here for you. The Indiana Hoosiers are your 2026 college football national champions after taking down Miami 27-21 last night. It's the Hoosiers' first national championship and caps off a dream 16-0 campaign under Kirk Cignetti. Big-time win for the Hoosiers, 16-0, perfect year. Over in the NBA, Golden State Warriors forward Jimmy Butler has suffered a torn ACL and will miss the remainder of the season. And over in the NFL, the Tennessee Titans have hired former 49ers, DC, and Jets head coach Robert Saleh to lead them moving forward. Much more NFL talk for you. Travis Demers, Casey Holdahl, and Dan Pizzuta on the program today. You've got the Rip City Drive. Travis Demers, Casey Holdahl, and Dan Pizzuta on the program today. You've got the Rip City Drive.
Live from the Coors Light Studios, it's time for the Rip City Drive, hosted by the crazy and often irrational Chad Doing. Coors Light, mountain cold refreshment. Choose chill.
Here's the snapback. Beck looks, throws it down the field, and it is intercepted by Indiana. Wow, what a play! And it is Jamari Sharp who comes up with a pick. And Indiana is going to win this thing. And this time they're just going to go down to the ground. And that will do it. And the rags to riches story for Indiana football comes to conclusion. And they are the national champions of 2026. What a football team.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing starts now.
What's good, Rip City? Brendan Slaughter here with you. Man, I could sit there and listen to that call all afternoon long. Congratulations to the Hoosiers. It's one of the best stories in all of college football, if not all of sports in recent years. We'll be diving into it and much more here on the Rip City Drive today. Brendan Slaughter filling in for Chad Doing today. We got an awesome show planned out for you guys. I'm also back with you tomorrow, so looking forward to that as well. Beautiful day here in the Pacific Northwest. Can't really complain much about the weather when it's this sunny. I mean, obviously, you'd like it to be a little bit warmer, but when there's no rain, you ain't going to hear any complaints from me, folks. Definitely a sunny, nice day driving to work today. I hope everyone's having a great Tuesday so far. And, man, I was looking something the other day that Portland's had like 6 or 7 straight days of no rain, like in January. That is unheard of. So, all smiles here from Brendan Slaughter. You want to join the conversation, 503-248-0620. You can also jump on the YouTube chat and chat with us there, 620 Rip City Radio on YouTube. Again, Indiana with a 27-21 win over the Miami Hurricanes down in Florida last night. De facto home game for the Miami Hurricanes, but nevertheless, it was the Indiana Hoosiers and Kirk Cignetti and Fernando Mendoza and that group that ultimately got the job done. We'll be hearing a little bit from Mendoza, Cignetti, even Mario Cristobal here to come. But just to kind of set the stage for you guys, I think Indiana was the cooler story. I wanted to finally see Cignetti get over the other. I think Indiana was the cooler story. I wanted to finally see Cignetti get over the top and ultimately see his years of winning at the highest level finally result in something like this. And not to mention the fact that I don't think it's a team that's just chock full of, 5-star, first-round draft picks either. So I think it really talks about the team for Indiana. That's on one side. So I really like those stories. And then you flip to the other side and the history with Miami, right? And you're talking about the fact that, it's a power that was a little bit before my time. I was born in 96, and I can be honest with you, say I don't really have much consciousness of Miami's first title that was in my lifetime in 2001 with Larry Coker and company. So I found it very interesting to kind of, I watched the U part 1, part 2 this last week, kind of getting ready for this game because I kind of wanted to get some of those Miami juices flowing again. And I kind of arrived at the point where I was like, I could see it being awesome either way. Like if Miami gets back and this is like the U is back, right? And those who are listening who are much older than I am can go, oh yeah, no, there was a time in the 80s when it was the U and, even into the 90s. And I think that's impressive. And for Miami to be able to overcome what they've had to work from basically since, they were obviously a national power in the early 2000s, fell on some, so-so times. And obviously we know around here real well that Mario Cristobal left Oregon to go head up that program. And the rest is history for Oregon getting Dan Lanning. The rest is now history for Miami reaching the national title game under Mario Cristobal. But I kind of knew coming into this game a lot would have to break in Miami's way for Miami to pull off this upset just because we've seen this Indiana team be so dominant throughout the season. And I got to give credit to Miami. They ended up playing better than I thought and, for being shut out, in that first half. And I thought that their resiliency late was particularly impressive. They definitely didn't, roll over in this game. They made Indiana work for it. I think early in the game when they hit Fernando Mendoza, he had a little bit of a bloody lip, bloody nose, something along those lines. And they were talking about how they wanted to hit him a lot. And they made Indiana earn this. And you talk about the 6-point margin of victory, not quite what we had come to seeing from the Hoosiers, who had kind of dominated their way through the college football playoff so far. But nevertheless, I think it's an awesome achievement for Indiana. I mentioned to my producer, Michael Shacker, before we got started, For those of you who are maybe fans of a program that maybe you've been on the losing end for most of the time. And in the case of Indiana, and this number was astounding to me, and I'm going to make sure I pull it up to have it correctly, but Indiana has historically been one of the worst programs in Division I football. In fact, when you look of the Division I FBS football programs, not one team in the country has lost more games than Indiana. They've lost 715 games. For perspective, a few other teams that are up there, Northwestern was 712 losses, Rutgers was 701, Wake Forest was 694, Kansas, right, 687. Even pains me to say Oregon State comes in on this list down at 17th. With 639 losses. So, again, this is an Indiana football program that, for lack of better terms, doesn't have any to much history at all. I mean, I'm sure that you could go back and find some of Indiana's successful seasons back in the Dizzy. But when you're talking about a program that had, is to this current moment 521 and 715, it's incredible to me that, I'm not going to take anything away from the fact that Indiana remained in the Big Ten. If Indiana got left out in the wasteland and, say they were in the Mountain West or somewhere else with conference realignment, and obviously we know with their basketball program that was never a even plausible scenario because their basketball program is so, recognizable, right? And then, ho-hum, Kirk Cignetti comes in. I think they make some waves last year, and then this year they just put the college football world on notice, man. And I think it should be a inspiration for anyone anywhere that the past doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many games you've lost in the past. It doesn't even matter if you need to fix the culture. If you have the right group of coaches, the right group of players, and you get a certain degree of luck, because there is an improbable nature to Indiana's title run. There is a nature of how did they get so lucky, and that's not necessarily taking anything away with what they've accomplished stat-wise, because I think they were a dominant team. But when you talk about the fact that, like, for example, Indiana did not lose a fumble in their final 15 games of the season. They lost a fumble in their opener, then did not lose a fumble again for the rest of the year. That kind of stuff is where I'm like, that's unheard of, right? Like that degree of luck, right? Not having, Fernando Mendoza go down with an injury, not having a key player go down. Like, it was just surgical how Kirk Cignetti and this Indiana Hoosiers were able to run through college football this year. And for lack of better terms, folks, the way that this is running down, it feels like this was, an NCAA, video game dynasty kind of deal where it's like, oh, someone took Indiana and now lead them to a championship. Like, you have to take a step back and just realize how impressive it is to kind of have someone usher themselves into that conversation who was not a blue blood in the sport of football, I'll say, was not expected to be, dominant under Kirk Cignetti in the Big Ten. Certainly better, but I think it's it's just one of those things we're going to look back for years. And I honestly think that this is going to be a great movie one day, right? We're already starting to talk about, movies. I think, for example, like I'm already super excited for when Nick Cage is going to play John Madden in that movie coming out shortly. And instantly, I just think to myself, who's going to play Kirk Cignetti? Who's going to play Fernando Mendoza? Maybe this is 20 years down the line, but I guarantee you, folks, this is the kind of stuff that you could write a movie about, considering what it was like when Kirk Cignetti got there to where they are today. So, speaking of Cignetti, let's go ahead and hear from Kirk Cignetti following the national championship. This is him talking about what it means to him to win the championship, finally get over the hump.
Now it's become reality. What's this moment like for you?
It's incredible. But, when you got the right people in your organization, coaches and players, and you got a plan and great leadership, and they commit to getting better, anything's possible. What's this moment like for me? Back when I was waxing the staff table at IUP, Thanksgiving weekend, and the school was shut down for the playoffs, did I ever think something like this was possible? Probably not. But if you keep your nose down in life and keep working, anything is possible.
I think that's incredible. Him talking about his time at UIP IUP, excuse me. And it's incredible, right? This is the guy who we talked about was kind of like the Wicked Witch of the West, for lack of better terms, in terms of how quickly he was able to start dominating college football. And in terms of X's and O's, I'm not sure there's a better coach out there right now in terms of being able to scheme up folks and, put together one heck of a group. And I want to continue to hear from Cignetti, too, and this, going along with what we just talked about, if it can be done in Indiana, it can be done.
Let me tell you, we won the national championship at Indiana University. It can be done, and I'm so happy for our fans. Words can't describe it.
I just go back and think, man, I'm sure Indiana thought they'd be on the right road when they hired Kurt Cignetti from James Madison, right? They're probably like, okay, we'll get back to some relevancy, right? But I don't think even in anyone's wildest dreams, if someone had said after Kirk Cignetti got hired, hey, 2 years later, he's going to win the title at Indiana, I think we'd probably be drug tested, whoever that was. I mean, that just the journey over 2 years. It's nothing short of incredible. A couple more here from Cignetti talking about Fernando Mendoza, who he said had the heart of a lion in this game.
Let me tell you, Fernando, I know he's great at interviews and comes off as the All-American guy, but he has the heart of a lion when it comes to competition. I mean, that guy competes like a warrior, and, he got really smacked a few times in this game. That one drive we kicked the field goal, they're on that, when they cross the line, you got to call him. And I can't say enough about his effort on that play. Cross the line, you got to call him. And I can't say enough about his effort on that play and our team finding a way to get it done.
Absolutely. And again, just the heart of a lion. And, last thing before we take a break here on Rip City Radio, 620 Rip City Drive with Brendan Slaughter is, Fernando Mendoza, I can remember so vividly 2 years ago, season of 2023, I guess 3 years ago now, technically, when he was a then redshirt freshman at Cal, and Cal was having a bit of a rough year, and they were playing a pretty good Oregon State team midway through the year, and that was Fernando Mendoza's first start. And I remember watching that game, and Oregon State ended up winning. Cal put together a great game under Mendoza, and I remember watching that game being like, that kid's got it. Like, when you just know when, like, a 18, 19-year-old kid just kind of has that X factor. You throw him out there, and you're like, okay, I can see it. And then he played the next year at Cal, and you could kind of see it too. I don't think even in my wildest dreams I could have expected Fernando Mendoza to be this effective for a national championship team. I think that's absolutely incredible. And, again, like I said earlier, just kudos to the Hoosiers, man. I never thought I'd be saying it, but it's one of the greatest title runs I can remember. I don't know if this Indiana team is necessarily the greatest college football team, that's been thrown out there. We might have to have that discussion a little bit later in the program. But in terms of the stories, one of the all-time great stories. You've got the Rip City Drive with Brendan Slaughter. We'll be right back. When we do, we'll be talking to Travis Demers, the voice of your Trailblazers here on 620 Rip City Radio. Welcoming you back to Rip City Drive here on a Tuesday afternoon. Brendan Slaughter here with you. Our next guest is somebody y'all know well, the voice of your Portland Trailblazers and one of the biggest Taylor Sheridan fans outside of myself. Travis Demers is back on the program. TD, what's going on, my brother?
What's happening, Brendan? Good to talk to you, man.
Oh, it is, Travis. It is. I'm in a good mood. It's sunny today. I don't know why. Just in a very good mood. The Blazers been playing some great basketball. For you, how's it feel to get a little breath in between games and obviously now have the team be 500, man? I'm excited.
And, to have a couple of days off, we haven't had a lot of this at home, right? So it's nice. Time with the kids, getting some done, so that's good. And the fact that the team has now won 10 out of 13 and is at 500 for the first time since mid-November, considering all the injuries and one of the toughest schedules in the league, it's been pretty remarkable what they've done.
Oh, it has been. And we'll be getting into all of it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask right off the bat, how are Lincoln and Lawson doing, my brother?
Oh, dude, they're awesome.
Good.
We've done some crafts and stuff the last couple of days. They're still playing with their Christmas presents, got outside and played yesterday in the sunshine. They are happy. All is good, man.
Dude, I love to hear it. Love to hear it. And before we get into the Blazers, I just got to get your 2 cents real quick. Can you still believe how impressive Indiana was this year, Travis?
No, I can't. I said this to Calabro the other night, because obviously he's from Indiana and, he's a basketball guy. I said to him, if you would go back in time and have said when Indiana won the national championship in basketball for the last time in 1987, that Indiana will win a football national championship before basketball does, what would you have said? I don't remember his exact words, but it was something about, being crazy or whatever. I mean, it's insane. Going into this year, no program had lost more college football games than Indiana. And what they have done, man, they weren't just good. They destroyed everybody. Obviously, they beat Oregon a couple of times. They beat Ohio State. They beat the big boys, man. And then, coming up with the big plays. And that 4th down and 5 when they had a 3-point lead, or was it 4th down? Whatever it was. The 4th down in the fourth quarter that they got the first down and ended up getting a touchdown. That call with that run by Mendoza, that's going to go down as one of the most iconic plays in college football history. That was unbelievable.
Oh, it was. And you took the words right out of my mouth, Travis. I was going to mention that I didn't know prior to last night that Indiana had the most losses of any Division I FBS team. And that just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like,
yeah.
Holy cow. Like, that's kind of crazy, even in today's world.
It really is. And to now hear who has overtaken them, it's no surprise that it's Northwestern.
Yes. No, and it's funny. Like, I looked at that list. You find some familiar candidates in there. Even Kansas is in there. And I was saying earlier before I had you on that you don't have to go too far down the list to find my beloved Beavs. I think at 16. So it's just was kind of interesting. But nevertheless, just wanted your thoughts on Indiana. But to get right into it, Travis, you just mentioned obviously how good Portland's been. But really, I think when you kind of peel it back a little bit, their only losses in 2026 were to a Golden State team on the road, tough place to play. First game without Denny Avdia. And then a absolute thriller with the Knicks when I believe they held a 104-103 lead with a couple minutes left in that game. So nothing to scoff at, in my opinion, at all. This team's been playing some great ball.
Yeah, and look, I mean, even if both of those games had been blowouts, and to your point about the game at Golden State, yeah, you played the first half without Denny Avdia, and it was but they won the second half. The first half was rough trying to adjust, but every team has blowouts. I mean, the Thunder got blown out by the Hornets at home last week.
Right.
Things happen. So just because a team loses a game badly, it's not, one game is not an indicator of anything. But all those things being said and looking at the teams they've beaten in 2026, yeah, they've got wins over teams like Utah and New Orleans, but they beat San Antonio on the road. And I know they didn't have Wemby, but they've been winning a lot of games without Wemby. They beat the Rockets a couple of times. They have beaten some good teams and won some close games. And the other thing, too, is that, we have seen this team earlier in the year with a 9, 10, 19-point lead in the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden it's a one-possession game. Those 2 wins in back-to-back games over the Lakers and the Hawks, those both got cut to single digits in the fourth quarter, and they went back the other way and won those games by 16 and 17 points. So they're figuring out how to extend those wins and win in situations going away, not just those close game victories.
Absolutely. Catching up with Travis Demers here on 620 Rip City Radio. Travis, one thing I did want to ask you, and you mentioned kind of the stretch of wins, and I want to circle back to that second matchup against Houston. And that game still kind of stands out to me as one of the more impressive wins this season. I think there's certainly different metrics. You can look at many different things. But it was almost kind of like deja vu for me, Travis. And I'm curious if you kind of had this at all. When Ime Udoka and Houston very clearly decided in that second game with their day off in between, hey, we're gonna double team Deni Avdija pretty much the whole game. And the weird kind of deja vu for me being there was seeing Deni get double teamed and then be able to pass to a teammate like Tumani Kamara, who had a career high, hit a bunch of 3-pointers. That is, like, to me, it goes back, like, that's kind of the dream of, like, what Portland maybe needed in Dame's prime, right? Where those guys, when the ball was taken out of the Stars' hands, could hit those shots when it mattered most. And I kind of left that game against Houston being unbelievably impressed, being like, when this team gets, as healthy as we expect them to get this year, at some point, I still really like the potential.
Yeah, 100%, man. Ding, ding. When it comes to that comment about Dame, there just weren't enough guys around him to make plays. But, yeah, Houston came out and they doubled Deni and they were all over him, and he didn't do much. And, yeah, he ended up with 20 points in that game. But you look at the volume of shots that he took. He took 15 shots. But Shaedon Sharpe took 22. Tumani Kamara, yeah, he had a career high, but he took 16 shots in that game. Caleb Love took 13 shots in that game. You had 3 guys with 20 or more points that night. And the defense came up and made plays. And by the way, going into the 3-game absence for Deni Avdija, Deni to Tumani Kamara was tied for the number 1 assist combination on 3-pointers made this season from one player to another. Deni had assisted Tumani on 48 3-pointers this season, the most of anybody in the league. And you look around at this team as a 3-point shooting team, they're near the bottom of the league in percentage. So, that game, he had 6 assists. He's obviously averaging around 7. But if he had better shooters around him, is he averaging a double-double? Is he averaging closer to a triple-double? Who knows? But the other thing that was really important about that game against Houston, the second one, is after getting just absolutely destroyed in second chance points in the first game, I think they only had, 6 or 8. In the second game, they had 14 offensive rebounds for 22 second chance points. They had more second chance points than Houston did in that game, and Houston is easily the best team in the league in that department. So they were able to make adjustments, figure it out on the glass, and find a way to beat a good team 2 straight games.
Absolutely, and just a bit of a fun question with that, Travis, because I was there at that game that night. Have you, in recent, or even just this year, just out of curiosity, because I haven't, have you seen a player that was just not seeing the ball as well from 3 as Jabari Smith was that night? I believe he went 0 of 10 from 3, and I think the last 3 or 4, one of them hit off the side of the backboard. Like, it was not Houston's night shooting the 3-pointer that night.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever go in and look at what other teams our fan bases are saying, and I'll do that a lot after our games because I want to see what the perception is of the Blazers, right? With the exception of Deni Avdija, because we've heard what other teams' fans think about him, and Rockets fans are less than pleased with Jabari Smith this season. That was a really rough night for him. Yeah, he was 0 for 10 from 3, 6 of 21 from the floor. Yeah. I don't know how many turnovers he had in that game, but it's been a rough few weeks for him. So that was bad. And yeah, we've seen nights like that. I mean, Anthony Simons a couple of years ago in Minnesota had an 0 for 10 night from 3 when McDaniels was all over him, and McDaniels was a terrific defender. It happens every now and then, but that was bad.
Yeah, no, that one stood out, and, obviously after the game, you could tell, Udoka was obviously frustrated, and I think that part of it, kind of the all-encompassing, was like, that's why I think it's one of Portland's more impressive wins this year. Catching up with Travis Demers here on the Rip City Drive. Let's talk a little bit about Deni. Travis, he looks to be the favorite for most improved player. Got to fend off Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a few others. A likely all-star, perhaps most importantly, though, a franchise player / building block. I think we all knew Deni had a little bit more in the tank with that stretch in the second half of last year. but I'm not sure anyone could have expected this kind of explosion. What was your kind of expectations for Denny coming into the year, Chad or Travis? And has this just exceeded all of them?
Well, I mean, of course, it's exceeded all of it. And we saw the metrics yesterday that if this had been, the previous format, he would have been voted an all-star starter. In my opinion, he is without question an all-star. But for him to average, what he's doing, he's over 26 points a game, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 36, 37% from three, playing the minutes that he has. And it's not just all of those things, Brendan. It's the fact that when so many other players were out, that he has carried this team on his back. And there are so many games that the Blazers won because he came up with big play after big play after big play. I'm not negating what anybody else has done, but he has been the leader that this team has needed. And he had never played point guard coming into this season, and he's had to play a lot of point guard. This team is better when he is not playing point guard, when they have Drew Holiday, when Scoot Henderson comes back. But he's done it, and he's done it well. So for him to be asked to do the things that he has done, and you watch how much he runs when he is off ball on offense, trying to create space and get opportunities and take over. He has done the things that he has had to do, and he's proven that he can do all of those things and be durable and stay healthy and play defense. And, yeah, he's turned the ball over a bit this season. But when he has such a high usage rate, and if you look at the guys around the league that have insanely high usage rates, they all turn the ball over a lot. And when you don't have a lot of weapons around you, it's going to happen, and it has. But I don't think anybody could have foreseen what he has been. The last 20, 25 games or so last year, he was terrific and had a bunch of triple-doubles. And if that was the guy that he was going to be this year, or, an improved version and continue that growth, awesome. But this has exceeded anybody's wildest imagination of what he could be.
Right. And it's been special to watch. I mean, I can, remember when Denny was still kind of getting his footing early into last year, and just to see where he's at now. And now it's kind of a thing where just talking to Blazer fans, Travis, it's like there is genuine excitement around not just the team, but I think Denny's been such a huge part of that. And I love his game, and it's been awesome. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. Definitely needs to be an all-star. But a couple other guys I wanted to mention, too. I'm not sure Portland would be where they're at right now, TD, without the play of Sidney Sissoko and Caleb Love this year. How big have those two guys been on two-way contracts for this team this year?
First of all, you're right. They would not be where they are at without Love and Sissoko. And if you would have said before the season that, there are going to be games that both those guys start, and that Sidney Sissoko is going to start, 18 games, and Caleb Love is going to be playing, 20-plus minutes a night, that probably would not have led to us being 500, in my opinion.
Sure.
And so the fact that they have done it, Caleb Love, when he came in, you knew he could score at Arizona, and he was undrafted, and he's an older player, as a rookie at 24, and it's one of the reasons he wasn't drafted. But in the preseason, he was just taking a lot of shots. High volume guy. Yeah, he scored, but he was taking a lot of shots. And the first few games of his career were that way. And then you start to see, once he gets comfortable, who he is. Yes, he can take and make threes, but he can get to the rim. And he was getting blocked at the rim a lot because he had not been used to defensive centers in the NBA making big plays. Well, he has adjusted how he finishes at the rim. And then his mid-range game, the way that has developed, he's a three-level scorer in this league. And I don't know what his ceiling is, but to me, there is no question that he's not just an NBA player, but he's a rotation NBA player. And he is aggressive on defense. He's not a great defender, but he's not a minus defender. And he is able to play well on both sides of the ball down the stretch of close games. For CD, he's shocked me because I wasn't so sure that he was an NBA player. And his energy and his effort and his athleticism and all that stuff is great, but he is really turned into a smart player. And his basketball IQ has grown, and it's shown in situations where he's very patient and gets his teammates involved. And his three-point shot has gotten better. He was under 30%. I'd have to look up what he is in January, but he has been really good of late. And both sides of the ball, the Blazers are not near 500. Maybe they're 5-7 games out if those guys are not playing the way that they have. And I'm not saying that they are the difference and they give you 5 or 7 more wins a season. But when you're down to your next man up and then the next man up after the next man up, if those guys can play, it changes the entire trajectory of your season.
Oh, 100%. And just to confirm your point there, TD, in the month of January, CD's shooting 39.5% from three. You'll certainly you'll take that. You'll take that kind of number, right?
That is an elite number, absolutely.
And then going along with that too, it's you kind of led me into my next point, Travis, which is when you consider the injuries, and we're not going to get too deep into it or anything like that. It is what it is, but you can't say there wasn't an avalanche of injuries this year for this team. And I think that's where not only do the players, rightfully so, deserve credit, the young guys stepping up. I really think this says a lot about Thiago Splitter. And you talk about the situation he thought he was coming into this year to the situation where he is now, having this team at 500, at close to the halfway point. It's impressive to me.
Yeah, it is. And I'm glad you said that too, because, the way this team played in the second half of last season, they showed a lot of promise, right? They were over 500. And that's something this team hadn't been in half of the season in a while. And I don't know how different this team's record would look or how different they would be playing if things with the coaching staff had not gone the way that they had. But I don't think it would be that much different, to be honest with you, better or worse.
Sure.
But considering all the things that you said, all of the injuries, all of the young guys playing, having one of the most difficult schedules in the NBA and having to navigate through all of those things, tough road trips, the fact that they are 22-22, it really does speak volumes about Thiago Splitter, and not just Thiago Splitter, but his entire coaching staff. Patrick St. Andrews has been, the guy who's been keeping track of the minutes and, who's on what minutes restrictions and things like that, and how those guys need to be playing and doing the math there. Nate Bjorkgren running the defense. And, the defensive metrics aren't as good as they were last year, man, but you look at the players that have been available and players that have been injured, Drew Holiday, Blake Wesley, Matisse Thybulle, Jeremy Grant, even Scoot Henderson, they're all really good defensive players. And I don't know how many teams can lose 5 good rotational defensive players and still play quality defense, and they have. So, all of those guys, yes, absolutely Thiago Splitter because he's the one running the show right now, but that entire coaching staff deserves an immense amount of credit.
Oh, 100%. And just to kind of, tack on that, Travis, just in my conversations with some of my friends or, some of my family that, enjoy watching, the Blazers play, there's definitely an energy that's been, kind of there that I feel like maybe, I'm not going to say that it wasn't there the last couple of years, but I think we all kind of knew where the theme of the seasons were going. Now that you're seeing this team kind of push for the play-in and be firmly in that mix, and then obviously a key injury to a key player in Golden State could shake up that race even more. But you mentioned it, Travis. I believe it's the either top or second toughest schedule so far. But the Blazers have just the 28th toughest schedule rest of the way. How much can you read into that versus the fact of what you said earlier where you're like, hey, it's the NBA. Everybody's still good. So how do you kind of look at that strength of schedule remaining for the Blazers?
Oh, I think it's a huge factor, right? Because, when you are playing teams that aren't as good, and we look towards the end of the season, and, in March and April, some of those teams might not be, let's just say, playing their best guys.
Sure.
They haven't played the Wizards yet. They haven't played the Hornets yet. They still have 2 games against Utah. I'm just trying to think of the other teams that have struggled this year. They have not played a lot of the bad teams. They have not played Brooklyn.
Pacers, yeah.
Yeah, the Pacers. They haven't played the Pacers. They don't play the Thunder again. They don't play the Lakers again. obviously the Warriors situation there, but they don't play the Warriors again.
Right.
They have one game left against Houston. They have one game left against the Knicks. They don't play Detroit again this season. So those elite teams, those best teams in the NBA, they're not playing them anymore. And they're playing a lot of the teams that are near the bottom of the league. And yeah, there's absolutely an energy there. I don't know how close we are to being out of time, but I want to bring something else up too, because after the Thunder game on New Year's Eve,
right?
I know it's been talked about a little, but after the game there was a New Year's Eve party. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I haven't. Please, yeah, let me know.
Okay, so some of these events at the team hotel. On holidays and things like that, the entire travel party is invited. A couple of people will show up and they don't stay too long. This is the first event like that in 8 years with this team that I have been to where every single player showed up and they stayed the entire time. The event ended around 1 o'clock.
Okay.
And it was players, coaches, broadcast, media, everybody that travels was there. And the way that it was set up, there was food and drinks and music and things like that, and they had a couple of stations where you could play 2K.
Nice.
But there was a cornhole tournament, and everybody was involved.
Nice.
Players were playing against media. I'm playing cornhole
Nice.
next to Blake Wesley, and they had a bracket set up, and it going through, everybody was involved, and you get to the championship, and it's Drew Holiday and Donovan Clingan against Gil Abraham, who is an assistant coach, and Ty, I don't remember his last name. He's the video coordinator.
Okay.
Everybody is just glued to watching this. And Nate Bjorkgren has the microphone doing the play-by-play and keeping score. And when Gil and Ty finally won, everybody erupted and went crazy. And, those kind of team-building events are really important. That's why, businesses do, off-site bonding events and things like that. The Blazers are 8-2 since then. They won 5 in a row after that. And the culture, right? We hear the word culture so much, and it gets obnoxious and annoying and becomes a cliche, especially when annoying teams put it on their jerseys and on their floor, not to single anybody out, the Miami Heat. But with this team, it really does make a difference. And I think this is the first Blazers team that I have been around in 20-plus years of covering this team, and there's not a single player that you can look at and say, okay, yeah, that guy can be a little bit of a problem. There's not a single guy on this team that you can say that about.
I think that I think that's so underrated, Travis. And the fact that you mentioned that story, I hadn't heard it, and just I can picture that in my head, and just picture everybody being joyous and jubilant and just really good vibes. And it's I almost want to extrapolate that, because to your point, Travis, the people I have talked to, Blazer fans and whatnot, they're starting to get that energy too and rally around this team. I had my brother-in-law. He hasn't been, quite as into the Blazers as he was, when the Blazers were Dame a few years back and all that. And he ended up going to the Knicks game with his brother that game. And I was hanging out with my little nephew and my sister, and he came back afterwards. He's like, that was a lot of fun. I'm like, I'm telling you, man, this team, they're on the path to something. It's fun, and the vibes are definitely awesome, Travis. And I appreciate you sharing that story, man, because that's good stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thanks. It was fun. I think it really does make a difference.
But absolutely. And then before we let you go, I have to say, you up to date on Landman, or is that on your to-do list?
Okay, so what I do is I wait for the entire season to be over, and then I start it so I can keep watching it. We haven't been on the road much lately, so I've gotten through 4 episodes, but we've got a cross-country flight on Saturday, so I'll probably get through the rest of it then. Copy that.
And then just on your radar, Trav, because I know you've told me before you like to, get caught up on this when you're on the road and whatnot. Yeah. I'm excited for the new Casey show that's going to be starting on March 1st, and then the next kind of spinoff, the Madison's coming out.
Wait, the new what?
The Casey spinoff, the Casey Dutton spinoff.
I did not know that was a thing.
March 1st, CBS and Paramount. It's called Marshals, and he's joining, I would assume, just this new Montana, U.S. Marshals kind of a thing. So that's going to be kicking off on March 1st. I'm excited for it.
Wow, I'm surprised they did a spinoff with Casey. I thought for sure Rip was going to get a spinoff.
That one, from what I've heard, is still in the mix. That's going to be coming this year as well. But yeah, they seem to move right ahead on the Casey spinoff. His son Tate's going to be in it too. So It's kind of cool to see we're going to still get a few pieces of the Yellowstone universe, TD, because I wasn't the biggest fan of how Yellowstone ended, so I'm happy to see some different stories get thrown out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for the heads up.
But yeah, all right, folks, that was Travis Demers. TD, you are the man, my brother. I appreciate you. We definitely went long, so thank you, good sir, for hanging on, and appreciate you having you on, my man.
Always good to talk to you, man. Thanks.
That was Travis Demers. Folks, we'll take a quick break on the Rip City Drive. When we come back, we'll be wrapping up the 3 o'clock hour. You've got the Rip City Drive. Welcoming you back to the Rip City Drive. Quick little segment as we went a little long with Travis Demers, but it was totally worth it. Make sure to check out that interview at Rip City Radio a little bit later, as we'll have that up and podcasted. But awesome interview with Travis Demers. Love getting to talk to Travis about a little bit of everything. Even learned a little bit of information about that cornhole tournament, how the team spent New Year's Eve. With how they played since New Year's Eve, man, it's not coincidence. This team loves each other, man. It's fun to see him play when it's all flowing for him. I'm excited to see him get healthy. And man, see talking to TD for a few minutes. I'm like, can we play some more Blazers games? Like I'm ready to see him, man. It's exciting. So we'll go ahead and take a quick break here on the Rip City Drive. When we come back, we'll be resetting you guys for the 4 o'clock hour. Got a lot to get into. We still got Casey Holdall to come, as well as Dan Pizzuta. You've got the Rip City Drive. What's good, Rip City? Brendan Slaughter here for 620 Rip City Radio. The Indiana Hoosiers are your 2026 college football national champions after taking down Miami 27-21. It's the Hoosiers' first national championship in football and caps off a dream 16-0 campaign under Kirk Cignetti. Over in the NBA, Golden State Warriors forward Jimmy Butler has suffered a torn ACL and will miss the remainder of the season. And over in the NFL, the Tennessee Titans have hired former 49ers DC and Jets head coach Robert Saleh to lead them moving forward. Much more NFL talk coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Coming up here on the big show, we got a little bit to get into here in the 4 o'clock hour, including Casey Haldall, Trailblazers digital reporter, joining us at 4:20, talk some Blazers basketball. Much more. You've got the Rip City Drive with Brendan Slaughter here on a Tuesday. Well, good afternoon, Rip City. 4 o'clock, Brendan Slaughter here for the Rip City Drive. 1 hour down, 2 hours to go. Hope everyone's having a great Tuesday afternoon so far. The sun is shining. We just had an awesome interview with Travis Demers last hour. And, to steal from my boss in this case, he likes to use the term peak Chad an awful lot. I like to tell myself that, this is peak Brendan because it's been good so far, and I'm certainly excited. And we got a lot to get into in terms of the Trailblazers and much more. As I mentioned, we're going to have Casey Haldall on the show. We're also going to have Dan Pizzuta coming up at 5:20 as well. And a lot to get into. Excited to kind of continue on some of the things we talked about with Travis there with Casey Haldall. Obviously, a lot of things to get into because this Trailblazer team, man, obviously very exciting. We're going to be talking about the Blazers, too, kind of getting you guys ready for that conversation. But just to reset, a few more things from the national championship that I want to listen to. We obviously heard from Kurt Cignetti. Want to hear from Mario Cristobal on the other side of the coin, as obviously Miami found themselves on the short end of the stick. But I want to hear a little bit about Mario Cristobal and how he talked about how Miami was able to get back to this national championship winning type ways.
They had the guts, the faith, and the trust to look at a place that was a complete mess and say, I'm going to be the person, I'm going to be a man of action, and I'm going to make things real, and I'm going to make the University of Miami a prominent program once again, and we're going to win, and we're going to win big, and we're going to change the culture. And that's not easy. A lot of people look at that, they shy away from it. These guys are legitimate, like big-time human beings. Going to be awesome fathers and husbands and leaders of the community way beyond football. And I think everybody associated with the University of Miami, and really even if you're a college football fan, you got to be fans of these guys because these guys certainly, they represent the way it's supposed to be done.
And that was Mario Cristobal, Miami head coach, talking about the loss. He also said that despite not winning the championship, he still considers his players champs.
I wish I could have done more. I wish we would have done more because I do think they are a deserving group, but in football, deserve has nothing to do with it. And again, credit to Indiana for putting together a great win. But really proud of our guys. I can't shy away from I'm really proud to be a Miami Hurricane. I'm proud of our guys. I'm proud of their toughness, their resiliency. Nothing to feel sorry about or sorry for. Just, you know what? Pick it up and go from here. And those guys in there, they're legitimate. They're champions. We didn't get it done tonight. We're not the national champion. Those guys are champions.
And I think to an extent, he's not wrong. I mean, you talk about how Miami, and I mentioned it earlier, right? Like, in my lifetime, I'm going to turn 30 in April. Miami won the 01 championship. I was, 5. I don't have much of a, recollection of that, that Miami team, obviously beyond just going back. And as I mentioned earlier, I rewatched the U Part 1, the U Part 2 this week and, was just kind of gearing up for the national championship game. But, you go back and look, but well before he was, getting started as a head coach, Mario Cristobal is featured in that documentary. He was obviously a elite offensive lineman for them when, they had extreme success, and what he talked about, like the Miami effect. And, if you go back and you watch the U at one point before they became the U, they had no national championships either before what Howard Schnellenberger came down and built it and handed it to Jimmy Johnson, handed it to Dennis Erickson, then obviously Butch Davis coming in and then handing off to Larry Coker. I mean, some crazy good teams and a lot of history there. And that's where, to an extent, the fact that Miami got back, right, in a year that this year, I don't think anybody was expecting Miami to run through their side and get to this championship. I think there was definitely some pull for Indiana, and there was some thought that Indiana was going to be here, but I'm not so sure there was quite as much thought that Miami was going to be in this situation. And I got to give him credit because, Mario did build that program up. You talk about Cam Ward last year and where they are now. You got to win a championship to be back. But if I was a Miami fan, it'd be frustrating for sure. But knowing that you were able to run through the playoff system and then you just ran up against what I believe is maybe the best individual college football team that we've seen, probably, man, it's tough. I mean, if you were to ask me straight up, probably the best team since the Joe Burrow Tigers. There's lots of comparisons. I think the Joe Burrow Tigers, the way that they just annihilated teams throughout the year and you just knew they were hands and feet above, better above everyone else, I think that stands out. So they're kind of in that realm. But, on the same token, I don't think there's a whole lot to hang your hat off if you're Miami in this case. And I think Miami's not going anywhere. I don't think, Mario's not going to have him back in a similar type situation. And ultimately, I think it was a big time opportunity for Miami. They weren't quite able to get it done, but they played a lot better against Indiana than I thought they did. And it really just came down to, a couple plays, including, special teams. And, ultimately that was what got it done. So, again, kudos to Indiana. A couple other audio things I want to hear from. Let's go ahead and hear a little bit from Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner, and then obviously the quarterback who led his Hoosiers to the championship. This is his initial feeling on the win last night.
Fernando, I know you've been asked a lot this week about what this return is like. Now that you're experiencing the national championship, hometown, leading Indiana to unprecedented heights, how do you describe what you're feeling right now?
I first want to give all the glory to God. And, there's no better group of guys I want to deal with. It's the most special moment of my life. There's such a great group of guys. I love you guys. Great job. Let's go.
Again, the passion from that kid is just, it's pretty cool. And again, you heard there, Fernando Mendoza, obviously a big-time religious guy, thanks God first, all those things. And that's something that's definitely been out there, a great story as far as somebody who, bet on himself, right? And he talks about it where he's like, yeah, I left Cal. And, I think Cal, Justin Wilcox at the time, still a pretty respectable program. And he's like, hey, I'm betting on myself. I'm going to go to Indiana, going to go play for Signetti. And, he's just kind of been that good old boy, right? In the sense of like, he doesn't swear, except for this, situation we got coming up. And believe me, it's bleeped and all that. But, his emotions, he's just one of those really, really good kids. And I told you from a little bit earlier in the show that on the field, you could tell he had that X factor a couple years back when he started as a redshirt freshman against, Oregon State, his first start of the year that year before he went on to be Cal's starter for the rest of the year. And this was Fernando Mendoza being pretty hyped after last night's game.
There's no better group of guys I want to deal with. It's the most special moment of my life. There's such a great group of guys. I love you guys. Let's go!
Might be one of the only times you've ever heard Fernando Mendoza, quote, swear. But, again, just going back to that, I think it was extremely impressive that Indiana was able to run the table, be perfect. You know how hard it is to be perfect, especially in these 16 or in this new format where you can play, 16, sometimes 17 games. Goodness, just absolutely impressive. Absolutely impressive. So let's go ahead and switch gears here for the last couple minutes. Again, got Casey Holdall coming up at 4:20, Trailblazers digital reporter. Very excited to talk some more Blazers with Casey. Obviously, Portland stock, folks, I'd say, buy stock in the Trailblazers right now, folks, because they're getting healthier. Team's 500. This is probably the most optimistic I've been about a Blazer team in, probably 5-6 years. I mean, at minimum, the last time the Blazers made the playoffs when they played against the Denver Nuggets. At maximum, probably maybe even a little bit before that, before, the bubble, and maybe even starting to think back to some of those Western Conference Finals vibes from 2019. Again, I'm not putting the skis ahead or anything like that. This team is still 500. You got to keep both feet on the ground. But again, going back to what we talked about with Travis earlier, the fact that this team is sitting at 500 right now, playing the second toughest schedule in the NBA, having the avalanche of injuries that they have is just beyond impressive to me. I think it speaks to the job that Tiago Splitter and his staff have been able to do. I think it speaks to what Travis was talking about, how this team is genuinely a great group of guys. And, I'll just say this. The story he talked about, that cornhole championship on New Year's Eve, the fact that they've lost twice since, and it's very clear. I think it can be overblown, like Travis was saying, the whole culture and everything, but I think it's absolutely incredible that, Portland has a team of guys that everyone genuinely seems to love each other. And it's not necessarily something you see in the NBA all the time, as Travis kind of mentioned as well. So I think, that like I said earlier, it's a good time to get stock in these Portland Trailblazers, because let's just look back. Like he said, December 31st, they have a 29-point loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder on the road. They fell to 14-20 on the year, and that was the end of 2025. Since then, wins over New Orleans, San Antonio, Utah, Houston twice, a close loss to the New York Knicks. Again, the Knicks couldn't really miss from three that night, but a game where you were right there to the end. A loss to Golden State. Again, that was a first half where Portland was trying to figure things out without Denny Avdia, the first game without him. And ultimately, that didn't even prove to be a long-term issue as they bounced back, took down the Hawks, took down the Lakers, took down the Kings, and now sit 22-22 in this stretch where we're at right now, folks, where they're getting some time. They're getting a little bit of time to kind of catch their breath, relax a little bit. As Travis said, they're at home. You're not resting on your laurels by any means, but the fact that they had a little bit of time, they don't play until they play a back-to-back on Thursday, Friday against Miami and Toronto before another little 3-game road trip that will have some challenges for sure. But this Blazer team, like I was talking about with Travis, the Houston game for me was the second one, was the one where I was like, okay, I think this team can be more than just a plucky upstart team this year. And I say that because Houston is a championship caliber team. They have Kevin Durant. They have dudes. Like, they are expected to contend for the West, period. The fact that they were able to take them down twice, and the fact that they were able to do it the second time when Udoka and his staff collectively said, no, not going to be Denny Avdia. Anyone else wants to beat us tonight, it's not going to be Denny Avdia. And, Travis obviously highlighted that point that I made. It reminds me of the Dame years, where when Dame would get trapped, doubled, by the time it swung around to the other forwards on the roster, it wasn't necessarily always a bucket. Now we're kind of seeing, your forward, in this case, Denny gets doubled. You've got forwards, you've got guards, you've got a multitude of other guys who can hit threes. Heck, you've even got Donovan Clingan, who's been able to hit threes from time to time this season and is getting better each and every year, or each and every game, I should say. So I think the potential for this team is very exciting. And, like Travis said, they have the 28th toughest schedule the rest of the way. So for those of you keeping track at home, there's only 2 teams in the NBA that have an easier schedule than them the rest of the way. So if Portland can, get healthy, stay healthy, we'll talk about injuries a little bit later too, get healthy, stay healthy, and keep building this group, keep building with this team, integrating Jrue Holiday back into the mix, Jeremy Grant being back in eventually, starting to get more guys back into the mix. I think this team's potential is really going to start showing. And obviously it's still going to be, a little while for some of the guys, and, no Dame this year. But as they start getting some more pieces back together, I'm looking, at the Chris Murray getting back soon. We're probably still a little ways away from Scoot. Blake Wesley's probably still going to be a bit out. But as they start to get healthier and the schedule starts to ease up, I think you're going to see Portland stack up some more wins. So I'm sitting here mighty impressed after they stand 22-22. Let's go ahead and take a quick break here on the Rip City Drive. When we come back, we'll be catching up with Casey Holdahl, Trailblazers digital reporter, talking some Blazers and much, much more. You got the Rip City Drive with Brendan Slaughter here on a Tuesday. Welcoming you back into the Rip City Drive here on a Tuesday afternoon, a Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday. Make sure you listen in and give us a call about 5 o'clock as we'll be giving away a couple pairs of tickets to the Trailblazers games coming up this week. Again, make sure you stay locked in. 5 o'clock, we're going to be giving those away, so tune in for that. But don't go anywhere because we are joined now by the digital reporter for the Portland Trailblazers, Casey Holdall, in addition to being the author of the Blazers Briefcase podcast, which you can catch on Rip City Drive or here on Rip City Radio right after the drive today. Pleased to welcome Casey onto the show. Casey, what's going on, man? How are you enjoying a couple off days here back home?
I'm doing great, Brendan. First of all, thank you for having me. And I'm doing well. It's, the off days when you work for the team or when you cover a team are they're the days are off, but that doesn't mean that you don't have work to do. So yesterday, obviously, Denny ends up fifth in fan voting, so that's a little story. So I write off that, and then they had practice today, so you write off that. We also recorded another Blazers balcony with Brooke today as well. So it's nice to have your nights, but even on off days, there's still plenty of Trailblazers work to be done, which is actually great because when the team is playing as well as they are right now, you want to work more and you want to work harder. When the team isn't playing as well, which has been the case at times throughout the past few seasons, it can feel like a slog. But recently, with the way the team has played, kind of the progress they seem to have made, it's a fun team to watch. It's a fun team to follow. And so I don't mind working more days these days. It's actually pretty fun.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Casey. And I was talking with Travis Demers last hour, and we were just kind of talking about that same thing, just overall the vibes right now. And for what it's worth, too, I'm glad we finally get to catch up, Casey. I think this is the first time we're talking on radio. I think we've worked side by side at Moda, but I'm not sure we've ever actually exchanged info. So next time I see you at Moda, I'm going to go ahead and say what's up, my friend. But just overall, your impression of where the Blazers are as they sit 500 right now, it really seems like there's a positivity and a buzz that we just haven't had in the last couple years. Would you kind of agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. I think they're playing as good a basketball right now, I would say, since, the start of 2026 and really maybe even kind of to the middle of December as they've played in the last 2-3 seasons. And so the response from the fans, I think I've noticed a difference. I traveled with the team. We were in Sacramento for this last trip. I had a number of fans come up to me in the hotel, which is right next to the arena, to one, just thanks for the coverage, but also being excited about the team and where they're headed and the way that they're playing. I think there's a real enthusiasm about this team. And I with good cause, because, as I think we've talked about a little bit recently, it's not like they're winning games because they're catching teams on an off night. It's not like they're winning games because one guy is having just a ridiculous game. It's not like they're winning games because they're playing the bottom of the NBA right now. They're playing good teams and getting wins versus good teams that are expecting the Blazers to come in and play well. They're not getting surprised by a plucky Portland Trailblazers team that they assumed they were going to be able to roll the ball out and get a win. They're getting teams' best effort right now, and they're just beating those teams even though they're getting that best effort. And I think, the Blazers are a team that plays really hard. And that was, I think, a complaint that fans probably had about this team in the last 3, 4, 5 seasons maybe, is that sometimes it just didn't seem like, they were playing as hard as you would like, even if it was going to result in a loss. That has not been the case for this team. They play hard every single night. They stay in games. And in the NBA, with so many games, with players in and out of the lineup throughout the league, if you play hard on a night-to-night basis, you're going to give yourself a chance to win every single night. And recently we've seen the Blazers playing hard are winning a lot more often than not as of late. So I think it's a sustainable path to success for this team. And I'm hopeful that as they get more and more players back from injury, that they're able to keep the good things they've already been doing and maybe add a few facets where they've been a little bit deficient. And then perhaps maybe go on a run here in the unofficial second half of the season, because they've put themselves in a position right now to where they're already in the play-in. And if they can kind of catch a little bit of fire and can play as well as they've been playing as of late, they could potentially be talking about a playoff team as well, which, again, is not something I think a lot of us might have expected going into this season.
Oh, absolutely, Casey. And I think you kind of hit the nail on it there is obviously what they can do. We all know Portland's played one of the tougher schedules in the NBA to this point. Per Tankathon, they have one of the easiest schedules the rest of the way. Don't obviously read too much into that, but you never know how all that shakes out. And I really just kind of wanted your thoughts, Casey, too, on 2026. And when you look at 2026, pretty much since that, lopsided loss to the Thunder last game of 2025, you look, Portland has won every game with the exception of a game to the Knicks, and that was a game where I believe they even had a 1-point lead late before the Knicks kind of closed it out late. And then the first game without Deni Avdija, a loss to Golden State, where you still were better in the second half. Other than that, it's been all wins in 2026. What do you think's kind of been the key to why Portland has started to kind of been able to string some wins together? And for lack of better terms, too, Casey, it's not against, like, the bottom of the NBA. I mean, look at San Antonio, Houston twice, the Lakers. There have been some good teams in there.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They beat the Celtics on the 28th.
Yes.
And, yeah, you mentioned on the road at San Antonio, both games versus the Rockets. A pretty good Atlanta Hawks team, the Lakers. So you're exactly right. And I think there's a couple reasons for it. One, as I mentioned, they play hard. And particularly once you get to when you get to the new year, the All-Star break is kind of in sight, but it's still a ways away, and you've already been playing for 2 months. So I think there's some teams at that point, when you get to January, maybe their legs are a little tired, and they're already maybe looking forward to the All-Star break. And so maybe those teams are not playing as hard as they could. The Blazers are playing hard every single night, and that's always going to give them a chance. Obviously, the step that Deni Avdija has taken this year has given the Blazers a completely different complexion in terms of what they might be able to do going forward and their ability to, stay buoyant, I guess, while they've had so many injuries. So I think, obviously, Deni is a huge part of that, too. I think Donovan Clingan, though, is kind of the X factor right now. I think he has really taken a step in his second season. He's playing very good basketball on both ends of the floor, played 37 minutes in the win versus the Kings, which is maybe his most important stat, even though he did also score 10 of his 21 points in the fourth quarter. He's averaging a double-double. He's protecting the paint. The Blazers are a much better defensive team this year than they've been in seasons before, and that's also giving them a chance to win games on a night-to-night basis. So I really think it's the combination of guys like Deni and Donovan taking steps, I think always playing hard, and I think having a bench unit now that can come in and not only just hold a lead, but sometimes even push a lead. And, we've seen in games this year, recently even, that the starters might not have it going on a night-to-night basis, but someone on the bench kind of stepping up, whether it's Caleb Love, Robert Williams has had some really nice games, Dwop Reese kind of just playing in spot minutes. Seems like he comes in and gives his team something when they really need it. I just think you're getting a team that plays hard on a night-to-night basis. Everyone is filling their roles, and everyone, I think, is much more concerned with getting a win than any individual numbers or accolades. And I think that's going a long way towards this team, celebrating each other and being happy for each other. And when you have a locker room that is supportive and it feels like everyone's pulling in the same direction, and I'm as excited for when one of my teammates has a great night as I am for when I have a great night, that's when you can put together a team that becomes more than the sum of their parts. And I think that's what we're seeing from the Trailblazers right now, is that they are a better team than they are on paper. And that's even without guys like Drew Holiday and Jeremy Grant kind of making their returns to the lineup. So if they're able to integrate those guys back into the lineup and also retain the things that they've been doing well, which I absolutely believe they can do, I just think it really makes sense why this team is having success, because they are being well coached, they're playing hard, and they have enough talent to where if they play hard on a night-to-night basis, they're always going to be in the game.
Let's talk a little bit about Deni. I think, his season has just been spectacular, Casey. A favorite for most improved player, a likely all-star, but perhaps most importantly to me, a franchise player, a building block. And I think there were, maybe some optimistic takes that Deni would be a pretty good player for the Trailblazers this year based on that second half last year. But I'm not sure many, if any, Casey, could have seen this kind of explosion come from Deni to where he's become someone that is getting compliments from around the league. Like I remember a couple weeks back when the LeBron comments about Denny went viral and all these things. And, he's kind of on that doorstep, or already is, of being a star. And I don't know how many people saw that coming this year, which is just awesome.
Yeah, I think those of us who obviously kind of paid close attention at the end of last year, I think we knew that Denny had taken a step, and we knew that he had really, after kind of a rough start to his time in Portland, had really settled in and had continued the maturation that maybe you saw in fits and starts in DC, and being a more consistent performer and having the ball in his hands more consistently in the second half of last season. I think a lot of us kind of saw the bones of a very good player. But to your point, Brendan, I don't think any of us thought he was going to be this good. And it really goes to show that, in the NBA, a lot of times it's really about opportunity. And that's really true for players who are kind of trying to just make their way in the league. So a guy like Caleb Love, Caleb Love doesn't get drafted, spends 5 years in college, is kind of a volume shooter guy. And in the NBA these days, they want guys who are kind of more efficient and less like just kind of getting buckets. And so he gets an opportunity, and he's able to go in and do more than people thought, because he's confident in himself and he gets that opportunity that a lot of times you don't get as a rookie. Denny, you can say the same thing because of the injuries. His ability to go from being a guy who didn't necessarily have to get the table set for him, but not someone you would necessarily have said is a playmaker for other guys, not necessarily someone you would say is a primary ball handler. He gets thrust into that role with Drew Holiday out and Scoot Henderson out, and he absolutely thrives in it, and he's able to expand his skill set in a way that I don't even think Denny knew that he could do. And until you get that opportunity, you just don't know that you can do it. And sometimes you get that opportunity, and it turns out, boy, I don't have that skill. But Denny has shown that he is however many tools you say in the NBA, Denny has them all. He can defend. He can handle the ball. He can shoot. His outside shot is much improved. He's able to defend multiple positions. He's able to get to the rim. He's able to get to the line. He's able to do every single thing that you want a high caliber player to do at 6'9", and with some size to him as well, and fast. And so the opportunities that he's gotten this season, which when they happened, you kind of wish he hadn't gotten them, because you'd much rather see Drew Holiday be healthy. You'd much rather see Jeremy Grant be healthy. But the Blazers able to take what seemed like a negative thing, and it is negative to have injuries, but being able to derive something positive out of it, which is putting the ball in Denny's hands and just seeing what he can do. I don't think anyone could have really predicted that and predicted how much of a step he was going to take this year. And I think the next step is going to be, when guys come back, the ability for Denny to reintegrate himself into the offense when he maybe doesn't have the ball in his hands as often as he does now. And I think they're probably going to change things up when guys do come back, now that they know that Denny can handle that responsibility, to give him more of that responsibility when they're healthy. But I also think, too, that, when Drew's playing 30-something minutes, he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. When Jeremy's playing, he's going to be driving and taking a lot of that responsibility that's been thrust upon Denny. So that's going to be a transition, but it's a very good problem to have. It's not really a problem. It's just getting healthy and changing up kind of the way that you're playing right now just a little bit. So, I think that what we've seen out of Denny this year, even for those of us who saw how good he was at the end of last year, there's always also a little piece of you, too, that's like, well, yeah, but that was the end of last year, where you're going up against some teams that, are they really even trying? And, guys are sitting out now. So you don't always know exactly what to make of that last month and a half of the NBA season. But when you're able to come in and even be better the next year at the start of the season, when everyone's playing hard, that's how you know that you really made progress.
Catching up with Casey Holdall, Blazers digital reporter here on 620 Rip City Radio. And Casey, kind of to your point, along with, you mentioned Donovan Clingan. He's someone I wanted to get your thoughts on, too, because quietly, and I don't know if it's necessarily been quiet, but to me it's kind of just like quietly he's been everything the Blazers hoped that he would be when they moved on from DeAndre Ayton in the offseason and kind of made him the guy. And I think, you look at like how much, for example, he's improved his 3-point shooting from the beginning of the year to now. And then, you mentioned his ability to play long minutes, his ability to be a defensive anchor. Like, I think DC deserves some more love this year. I think he's been playing some steady, quietly good basketball as a sophomore, which that's awesome.
He really does. And, his game is obviously not a flashy game by any stretch, but he just goes out there and is such a smart defender and understands how he fits in the offense. Is a guy who is just an arch competitor and always wants to win. And, he coming out of UConn, he's got that UConn thing to him where it's like he's a little bit crazy. And when the team isn't winning, I think it probably pisses Donovan off more than maybe anybody else. And so I think there's that motivation and just that maniacal approach to the game and to wanting to be better and to wanting to support his teammates and wanting to mix it up a bit and being kind of the one guy on the team who, it's a team full of nice guys and Donovan's a nice guy too. But when he gets out there, like, the eyes kind of go black a little bit and like he just becomes like a different guy, and you need a guy who plays with that edge. And it's especially helpful when it's a guy who is really defensive minded and who is big and can kind of throw himself around a little bit and make you feel his presence. Those are the things that when you're a rookie, I think you kind of have to learn the physicality and the speed and learn how to kind of take some of the trash talk you're going to get from other teams and then give it back. And I feel like Donovan has done such a good job of kind of learning in his first season and then taking a lot of that stuff that he learned and then applying it to his second season. I think that, he's shaped up his body as well. And that's something that, when you're that big, you always have to be a bit cognizant of that. And particularly when you're young, like your body is still changing. And so you're kind of trying to learn how to use your limbs and how to get up and down the court and when to conserve and when to go hard. And I think Donovan has done a great job of that. Obviously, rounding himself into a passable 3-point shooter in today's NBA for a center is incredibly important. And I think it really helps out guys like Denny Avdia and Jeremy Grant and Tumani Kamara in terms of and Shaden Sharp as well, a guy who we haven't even really talked about yet in terms of getting to the rim and opening up space in the paint when you're able to draw the center out as Donovan's able to do now. I think also, too, when you become a decent 3-point shooter, it also helps you defend the 3-point line better. I think you develop a better understanding of kind of the timing of that and what it takes to get out to the 3-point line and then get back into the paint. I just think that the way that Donovan has played this year, absolutely one of the best second-year players this season. In his draft class, I think it was kind of people weren't especially enthused about it. And you get Donovan at 7, and I think, the Blazers really feel good about that pick because they have a starting center that they can just plug in to their lineup now for the next decade. And when you're able to go out and get pieces that, as you mentioned, can be cornerstones and building blocks without having to expend other assets other than your own picks, that allows you to build around those guys. It allows you to use your assets in other ways. So I just think up and down, it has been an unqualified success in drafting and developing Donovan Clingan. He's still improving. He's still got a ways to go, but he's already a very good starting NBA center at just 21 years old. And, I think we're also starting to see the NBA is kind of coming back a little bit to more traditional big men and being able to add kind of some of those stretch big skills as Donovan has done. I think it's just going to expand his game even more. So I think that he has really been an important part of this team's improvement this season, and I fully expect him to continue to be a part of that improvement for seasons to come.
Catching up with Casey Holdall here on Rip City Radio 620. Casey, appreciate your time. Just a couple more questions for you before we bounce out. I want to get your thoughts, too, on two guys that, I don't know if Portland is where they are right now without the play of Sidney Sissoko and Caleb Love. And I feel like they're kind of two unsung heroes a little bit, but have been playing some great basketball, especially on two-way deals. How impactful, especially when you consider the injuries, Casey, have those two guys been this year?
Oh, they've been incredibly important. And there's multiple games this season that the Blazers do not win without Caleb Love, and multiple games this season the Blazers do not win without Sidi Sissoko. And I don't know that there's any other team in the NBA that can say that about their two-way players. Like, they have made such an impact on this team. And I agree, like, initially I think it was kind of in the shadows. I do think they're starting to get credit for it now because they absolutely deserve it. And they're regular parts of the rotation. I mean, Sidi I think he's started half his games he's played in this year, if not half of them. He's played significant minutes in a lot of games this year. Caleb Love, as we've talked about, leading all rookies in scoring since, Christmas Day, and a guy who has made more three-pointers as a two-way player than any other two-way player in NBA history. A guy who, again, like, I don't think that there was much expectation that either one of those guys would really even play much this season, let alone play consistent minutes, and have a real effect on winning on a game-to-game basis. And, the two-way program has been a successful program regardless, but it really feels like the way that it's shaken out this year for the Trailblazers really in excess of what you would expect in that program, because again, you expect that some of those guys are going to be guys you want to keep around because maybe someday they might be able to help you somewhere down the road. For your two-way guys to be a starter, and I think at this point you can legitimately say for Caleb, one of the best rookies in the NBA this year. I saw the NBA.com had him ranked 9th in their rookie ladder for a guy who was undrafted, who's technically not a quote-unquote NBA player. He's a two-way player.
Right. Yeah.
I just that's almost unbelievable. And I mean, perfectly frank, like early on in the season, you see games where you're like, oh, they're going to have to play City tonight, and you're like, boy, I don't know how that's going to work out. You have games where you're like, boy, Caleb Love is the only healthy guard for the Trailblazers tonight. Well, all right, I guess we'll see how that goes.
Right.
And now it's like you don't even think about that. You're like, oh, good, they're coming in the game. Like, right. And that's been an issue for the Blazers in the past couple seasons where you had, 4 or 5 guys, 6 guys you felt pretty good about. But then when you get to that second rotation, it's like, it's white knuckle until you can get the starters back in. That is not the case for this team anymore. Those guys are really making a difference. And now you're not like, boy, I hope these guys can hold serve long enough to where we can get back to the starting rotation. Now you're seeing those guys and you're expecting them to come in and expand the lead or get you a lead or result in a win. So, for Caleb and Sadie to play as well as they have this year, I mean, it's a real testament to the two-way program anyways, but I think it really shows, the work that those guys have put in. And I think you got to tip your cap a bit to both the Blazers coaching staff and obviously the front office because, they go out and get City, a guy who had been in San Antonio for a couple of years and it just never kind of came together for him there for whatever reason. And then a guy in Caleb who, again, despite having played for, I think, 3 seasons at UNC and then 2 seasons at Arizona, 2 very good college programs, just didn't have the real interest out there as a rookie. For them to go out and get those guys, and then for the Blazers coaching staff to be able to help shape those players into successful rookie players, and in City's situation a few years in, is phenomenal. Like it's really amazing they've been able to do that. And again, the Blazers aren't where they're at right now this season without the play of City and without the play of Caleb. And I just don't think there's many other NBA teams who are relying on two-way players in that way and having success in that way. And that's not something I think any of us would have predicted.
No, it's been absolutely impressive. And, kind of along those same lines, Casey, I think it shows, the strength of Tiago Splitter and his staff. And I think when you consider what he thought coming into this year was going to look like and where the Blazers are now, 500, I think it's an impressive coaching job for him as well. Casey, you and I could probably talk for an hour. I wish we could, my friend, but definitely need to let you run. But looking forward to catching up next time, and look forward to saying what's up next time I'm at Moda Center, Casey. It was great. Thanks for joining me today.
Please do, Brendan. I really appreciate it, and you're doing a great job.
Thanks, Casey. Appreciate you. Have a good rest of your Tuesday. And that was Casey Holdall, folks, Trailblazers digital reporter. Certainly enjoy that conversation. Man, between the conversations with Travis and Casey, I'm like hyped, folks. I'm kind of disappointed there's not a Blazer game tonight. Man, they've been playing some great basketball. It's been fun to be a part of. We'll be talking about it a little bit more here on the show, but let's go ahead and take a quick break here on the Rip City Drive. When we come back, we'll be getting you ready for the start of Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday. Remember, 5 o'clock. We'll be back giving away Blazers tickets here on the Rip City Drive. Welcoming you back into the Rip City Drive here on a Tuesday afternoon. Brendan Slaughter here with you guys. Hope everyone's having a great Tuesday so far. Thanks again to Casey Holdall for joining us last segment. That was an awesome time with Casey. Man, after my conversations with Casey and Travis Demers today, folks, let me tell you, Blazers, it's hype right now. I'm definitely excited to see where this team's going, and man, I can't wait till Thursday's next game. But nevertheless, speaking of Thursday's game and Fridays, we're just about 10 minutes or so away from your opportunity to win some Blazer tickets. Make sure to be listening in here for the next segment right after the update, 5 o'clock hour. We're going to be giving away 2 pairs of Blazer tickets, one for the matchup against the Miami Heat on Thursday, one for the matchup against the Toronto Raptors on Friday. Listen to me, Brendan Slaughter, 5 o'clock. I'm giving away some Blazer tickets for y'all. So make sure to stay locked in. We'll go ahead and take a quick break here on the Rip City Drive. When we come back, top of the 5 o'clock hour, resetting you guys everything with the NFL, Trailblazers, much, much more. We'll also be catching up with Dan Pizzuta at 5:20, talking some NFL playoffs. But again, stay locked through the break. When we come back, Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday. I've got Blazers tickets for you guys. What's good, Rip City? Brendan Slaughter here with you for the Rip City Drive. The Indiana Hoosiers are your 2026 college football national champions after taking down Miami 27-21. It's the Hoosiers' first national championship in football and caps off a dream 16-0 perfection campaign under head coach Curt Cignetti, quarterback Fernando Mendoza, plus ho-hum Heisman Trophy along the way. Over in the NBA, the Golden State Warriors suffered a big injury as Jimmy Butler has suffered a torn ACL and will miss the remainder of the season. And over in the NFL, the Tennessee Titans have hired former 49ers, DC, and Jets head coach Robert Saleh to lead them moving forward. Much more NFL talk to come this hour after we've been pretty Trailblazers heavy. Got Dan Pizzuta coming up here in the next little bit. Plus, Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday. Make sure you stay locked in as we're giving away a pair of Blazer tickets next here on the Rip City Drive. Welcoming you back in. We've been talking a lot about the Trailblazers today. We got NFL coming up with Dan Pizzuta. Folks, we've been talking a lot about the Trailblazers today. We got NFL coming up with Dan Pizzuta here in about 20 minutes. Very excited to talk some NFLs. We've been very Blazers heavy, which is exciting too because the Blazers have been playing great, but obviously the NFL playoffs are in full swing. Lots of stuff to get into there as well. But before we get started, let's open up Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday. Call now, 503-248-0620. We'll be taking caller number 8. Number 8 for Denny Avdia, number 8, and number 17, Shaden Sharp. Number 8, number 17 will be the winners, getting a pair of tickets to Miami on Thursday or Toronto on Friday. Call now, 503-248-0620. We've got 2 pairs of tickets to give away here on Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday. Again, 503-248-0620. Make sure to call now to get Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday. Let's go ahead and set the stage now for the NFL. And as we talked about, Dan Pizzuta will be joining us here in just a few minutes. Obviously, talking a lot of NFL talk with Dan. Very excited to talk some NFL playoffs because there's a lot going on right now, folks. Obviously, conference championship games are set with the Broncos taking down the Bills 33-30 in overtime. The Seahawks taking the 49ers behind the woodshed 41-6 up in Seattle. The New England Patriots taking down the Texans 28-16 in a very sleet-heavy game up there in Foxborough. And then another overtime game, the Los Angeles Rams taking down the Chicago Bears 20-17. The conference championships are now set, folks. It will be the Patriots and the Broncos and the Rams and the Seahawks. Lots to get into. Obviously, right off the bat, I got to throw out my big kind of takeaway from the weekend, and that's injuries suck. They really, really do, because I was, not nearly on Chad Dewing's level, but I had a lot of fun seeing the Broncos be successful this year. I really liked their team. I like seeing Sean Payton have another swing at it. It's been fun to watch. But now, after Bo Nix suffers that injury and will be out for the rest of the season, and it's the Jarrett Stidham show against the Patriots, the buzz is kind of gone. I mean, don't get me wrong. I will be asking Dan, and I'm curious to see what he has to say about Jarrett Stidham, but in my opinion, this is not a Nick Foles situation a handful of years ago. I can honestly say right now, New England's a 5.5-point favorite on the road. I believe they opened up as a 4-point favorite. Denver's defense, again, Pat Surtain and company, they could keep this low scoring enough to where maybe Denver could still, be in this thing. But with how well Drake May's playing this year, it'd be really hard to not go with the Patriots here. And that kind of just takes out a little bit of the luster for me from this matchup. Because I think if Bo was healthy and this was Bo versus Drake May, would have been awesome football. And in the Mile High, with obviously the advantage being the Broncos, now you got to look, and the advantage kind of swings the way of the Patriots. Obviously, they have to go into Mile High and win. No easy task. But on the flip side, obviously, winners win, and they get to advance. But this right here, where it's like if you're the Bills or Josh Allen, you're kicking yourself because you obviously didn't do enough. Denver won the game outright, and you didn't do enough. And now you'd be sitting there looking like, wow, it'd be, Denver is going to be in that with their backup quarterback. And I think that's just a different, situation and take there for the AFC. So that's kind of disappointing, obviously, to see Bo go down. I really want to see the Denver Broncos at full strength. We'll see. Sean Payton certainly has more confidence in Jarrett Stidham than I do. We'll see. I don't want to put anything one way or the other, but I think it's going to be real tough for the Broncos to get over the hump and get to the Super Bowl without Bo Nix. Then on the other side, man, part 3, the Rams and the Hawks, man. I mean, this Seahawks team, like, I'll be honest, folks, I was dabbling in a few, sports bets, a couple parlays over the weekend and was, real into the NFL games. And I was like, I thought the Seahawks would win, but I still thought the spread, and it was 7 over the 49ers, was a bit high. In my hearts to hearts going into this game, I'm like, okay, I'm very confident Seattle wins, but it's going to strike me as like a 27-20 game, a 24-17 game, 24-20, something along those lines. I knew the Seahawks were the better team, but I thought the Niners would put up a better fight than what we saw. Nevertheless, pretty much after Rashid Shaheed took that kick return back, it was pretty much all she wrote for the 49ers in that game. And that's disappointing because I have the Niners covering that 7-point spread, so that parlay went to Timbuktu and back. But nevertheless, I have to give credit where credit's due, and I've said it before. On someone here and someone who doesn't really have a, quote, NFL team. I root for players more than I have an NFL team that I follow for. And I'll be honest, I'm not by any stretch or form a massive Seahawks fan. I'll pull for them when they're good, West Coast and all those things, me being here. But I didn't grow up a Seahawks fan per se. Now, that's interesting for me because my youngest brother, Braden, who's 17, maybe the biggest Seahawks fan I know. If it's not him, it's my best friend Keenan, who literally has a 12th man tattoo on him. My best good friend from college, Keenan. So I'm surrounded by a lot of Seahawks fans. I'll even throw in my brother-in-law, Matt Sheehy, and my sister, Alyssa Sheehy, as well. They have turned into big Seahawks fans, too. So it's kind of like I'm surrounded in my family by a lot of Seahawks fans after we grew up with not very many people in our family, if anybody, being Seahawks fans. Again, same kind of a thing. So now that I'm kind of seeing how good this Seahawks team is, I just got to step back and give oodles and oodles of credit because what Mike Macdonald has done with this group this year, holy cow. I mean, it is beyond impressive. And I go back to a couple weeks back, we thought that win over the 49ers to secure the division was big, right? I'm like, okay, that was a statement win. But then when you got to play a team another time and to beat them the way that they beat them, I mean, just domination. I mean, you're talking about 100 yards on the ground from Kenny Walker. Not necessarily the big explosion game we've come to see from Jackson Smith and Jigba, but nevertheless, like the Seahawks, lack of better terms, didn't really need it in this game. 41-6, 17-point first quarter, 7 in the second, 10 in the third, and 7 in the fourth for the Seahawks. They crushed. They simply enough, they just crushed in this game. The Niners' injuries finally caught up to them, and ultimately that's where we see the matchup that we have now, which is Broncos-Patriots and Rams-Seahawks. And as I mentioned, the Patriots come in as a 5.5-point favorite on the road. Given the Bo Nix injury, that's not too surprising to me. I would guess that would probably creep up to closer to 7 by the time we get to game time on Sunday. And then early line, Seahawks at 2.5-point favorites over the Rams at home. Again, that game's going to be in Lumen Field. And the Rams 1-1 against the Seahawks this year. Both teams, they split their matchups, obviously, with the Rams getting the win over the Seahawks back on November 16th, a 21-19 victory, and then Seattle winning 38-37 in overtime to help them secure the division just before Christmas. So this has the potential to be another incredibly exciting game. And I was watching the Seahawks game with my buddy Keenan, who I mentioned over the weekend, and throughout this game, folks, he was pulling for the Bears like nobody's business. He wanted the Seahawks to play the Bears so badly and was so against wanting to face off with a divisional opponent yet again. And I think that's a challenge, right, to have to play a team in the Niners last week. They made it look easy, but I still think it was challenging to prepare for another team you've played a couple times. And same for the Rams now. And I think when you talk about star power, the Rams definitely have it. I think Matthew Stafford is on the short list to be the MVP this season. If not him, maybe Puka Nacua, who's been just outstanding this season. And to go back to this Rams-Bears game, it was a thriller. Obviously goes to overtime. I'm not sure I've ever seen a quarterback make as good of a throw as Caleb Williams made to Cole Kmet when he was running backwards, had about a quarter of a second to turn back around and then just launch that ball deep. That boy is special. Like, he is special. Caleb Williams is a special, special football player. And I'm very excited to see what he and Ben Johnson and the Bears can do in future years, because they are not going anywhere, folks. Mark my words. But ultimately, I think this came down to the fact that McVay's been there, right? Ben Johnson, first-time head coach, right? And obviously the execution, the know-how. The Rams have won a Super Bowl under McVay. This is a team that's done that. Stafford, they knew how to get it done late and were able to ultimately get the field goal to secure the 2017 victory. But I got to give credit to the Rams. I kind of was picking against them going in. I didn't know how them Southern California boys would do playing in, 2-3 degrees that it was up there in Chicago. But I give them credit. They made a way. They found a way to get it done. And ultimately, I think that's why we're going to have one heck of a matchup between the Seahawks and Rams up in Lumen Field this weekend. It expects to be a dry game, so it's going to be not nearly as cold as the Rams dealt with in Chicago. Most likely dry, from what we've seen. So I'm very intrigued. I'd still say at this point, got to lean the Hawks. They've earned that respect and that right at this point. But when you're talking about one of the coaches who I have, oodles of respect for, Sean McVay. He's done it. He's been to Super Bowls. He's won them. He's lost them. He has that experience. And going back to, this is Mike McDonald's only second season as a head coach too. And you still have to be able to see your team through the Super Bowl and get over that first hump. And I think back to, for instance, Sean McVay when he was a first-time head coach, and the Rams had that incredibly good offense, and it was Tom Brady's last Super Bowl in New England. And Sean McVay, that Rams team, Jared Goff, all that. And Sean McVay then ran into a very experienced coach in Bill Belichick, and it turned out to be one of the more boring Super Bowls I can remember because there wasn't a lot of offense. The Patriots were just able to lock down what the Rams did offensively, and that was history. Then you flash forward a couple of years, how much more prepared McVay was, and obviously different personnel with Stafford, to win that Super Bowl a few years later. And I think McVay is one of the best coaches around, not just offense, but across the board with what he's been able to accomplish in recent years. And I think this is going to be an incredible battle of the minds. McDonald versus McVay, Stafford versus Darnold, Puka versus Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, this just writes itself. And I'm personally very excited to catch up with Dan Pizzuta next, who we're going to talk to break it all down. I want to get his thoughts on some of the head coaching hires, as well as we're starting to see some new coaches get into place and much, much more. We'll go ahead and take a quick break here on the Rip City Drive. When we come back, we'll be catching up with Dan Pizzuta, talking NFL and much, much more. You've got the Rip City Drive with Brendan Slaughter here on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcoming you back into the Rip City Drive here on a Tuesday afternoon. Brendan Slaughter here with you. Pleased to welcome back to the program friend of the show, Dan Pizzuna, NFL writer for a variety of outlets, most recently Yahoo Sports, to talk some playoffs and the offseason. Dan, how are things? Happy New Year to you, my friend.
Yeah, you too. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Obviously, NFL in full swing, staying busy here, obviously, locally, as the Seahawks have been quite the talk of the town, I'm sure even over on your neck of the woods. And we got to start there because the beatdown that they handed the 49ers, Rashid Shaheed hit the gas on the first play of the game, and I think the Niners were, staring back at the scoreboard for the rest of the game. How impressive was that win over the Seattle, Dan? Because going into the game, I expected the Seattle to win. I think the point spread was pretty accurate, 7 or so. That's kind of what I expected. Mike McDonald and company had other plans, though.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just kind of one of the things, like you said, once that first opening kickoff happened, and then that really gave Seattle kind of the fuel to do exactly what they want to do, which especially on defense, which is to play so aggressively in the way they were able to put a lot of pressure on Brock Purdy. And they just had nowhere to go, the San Francisco offense did. And that basically just set the tone for the entire game. They were pressuring him immediately, looking up. He averaged over 4 seconds to throw. And that was basically because at the snap, he was running for his life. And there weren't, because the secondary coverage is so good, there was nowhere for him to throw. So it was just, things that compounded on top of each other to kind of get that perfect storm of the blowout that happened. And it is incredibly impressive because we saw what San Francisco was able to muster up a little bit against a pretty good Philadelphia defense the week before. But for Seattle to really come in, just control that game from the opening whistle is incredibly impressive.
Yeah, it seemed to me like the way that they were able just to imprint how they wanted to play the game. I mean, you're talking about being at Lumen Field, their first home playoff game in so many years. And I think it was Tom Brady who said, man, I wasn't here for the Beastquake, but I might have felt a little tremor right there. And I feel like that's as accurate as it was, Dan. Like, the energy was just expunged on one play, and it was just all Seahawks from there. I'm not sure I can think of an NFL game, especially in the divisional round, that just went so lopsided so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is, I think the divisional round is usually, the best full weekend of football, just because of it's usually, the best teams that are still left. So we're usually getting closer games. Usually, we see some in the wild card round that kind of look more like this. We're not used to seeing it in the divisional round. But like you said, with this Seattle home field advantage, I think we've kind of seen over the past a couple of years, home field advantage league-wide is not the same as it used to be. I think you can see one from the point spread. I don't think it's put in, Vegas lines as much as it is. And when you kind of look at home field advantage in final point margins, it hasn't been as big, I think, since, about 2020 a bit. It's decreased in its importance. But when you look at a playoff atmosphere in Seattle, that is absolutely a home field advantage that matters.
Oh, it certainly is, and we'll be getting into that matchup against the Rams here coming up a little bit later. But switching gears slightly, Dan, let's talk about the Bo Nix injury. Absolutely brutal for the Denver Broncos, and I feel for them, their fan base, Sean Payton, and what have you. I don't want to rain on Bronco fans' parades, but I just have a hard time seeing Jarrett Stidham coming in and having a Nick Foles type of impact. How do you kind of see that matchup, and how do you kind of look at the Broncos in this matchup against the Patriots kind of moving forward after Bo got hurt, basically helping them beat the Bills?
Yeah, I think when you look at the offense, it's obviously not going to be a Nick Foles type because, Nick Foles at least got some regular season run going into the playoffs, and there was a little more there. So obviously Nick Foles was not getting thrown in during the divisional round or the conference championship game. So I think that comparison, obviously, like you said, is not going to hold up. I think there are some things they can do. Sean Payton is still very good at designing offense. So I think there are still schematic things that they will be able to do with Stidham at quarterback. Obviously, you're probably not going to have as much movement in the pocket as Bo Nix would, which was a big part of his game by design, and also he does like to bail from some pockets early. But so there are a lot of places where he is out of the pocket, and that's where they're designing some of these plays. So I think you're going to see a little less of that. You're probably going to see a little more, throwing over the middle of the field, some tight end usage, a little bit. So I do think we are going to get some schemed up things from Sean Payton. And then I think it is obviously the way Denver has played, the past 2 years, really, it's going to fall on this defense. And I think after you saw what Houston was able to do to New England last week, this is a similar pass rush. And, if not the same quality,
sure.
It's very up there. So I think if you can get some of those isolations on the tackles, and you have a Nick Benito who can, do what Will Anderson did last week, that's probably going to be the type of game plan. And how, if Denver does win or at least keep it close, that's going to be the formula they need to play with.
Catching up with Dan Pizzuta here on 620 Rip City Radio. Appreciate your time, Dan. And along those same lines, I want to talk about the Bills, right? Pretty much had been a model of consistency under Sean McDermott. I think was, largely responsible for kind of helping change that culture there. And obviously, as a result of losing the Broncos, I don't know if he is canned if they're, winning and they lose in the conference championship next week. But how much of this is Buffalo feeling the pressure to capitalize on Josh Allen's prime, considering he's going to turn 30 before next football season?
Yeah, that certainly, I think, plays the big part in it. And I think you can kind of look at it's a little unfair to Buffalo because they did not have, their best team over the past couple of years. And they were, I think, penalized a little bit by being the AFC contender that we think of every season.
Right.
The Kansas Cities, the Baltimores, the Cincinnatis. Buffalo, I think McDermott almost got penalized for being the one to make the playoffs because then everyone thought this was going to be their chance when I think this was also their worst team of kind of this era too. So I think there was a lot of things that McDermott did do well. I understand wanting to potentially just make a change, and it's kind of the Andy Reid thing a little bit. We saw it with Baltimore and John Harbaugh. Sometimes it's just you do need to make a change, and having a different voice in the room could help. The tough thing is I'm not sure if you're getting that in this coaching market right now, especially with Harbaugh off the market. So I think when you look at the potential coaching candidates, that's a bit of a tough sell for me. And keeping Brandon Beane as the general manager, not only keeping him, but giving him a promotion in this. And I think that is as big, or if not a bigger reason for why Buffalo has kind of looked like it has over the past couple. I mean, there's, nothing that aged worse this season than Beane's, hit with local radio in Buffalo when he was going off about the receiver quality. And then their biggest play of the season is going to Brandon Cooks. I think like that is a big part in what has happened. So I can understand in a vacuum potentially moving on from McDermott because it is, it has been so long with this without kind of reaching that pinnacle that they're hoping for. But I think in the way they did it and how they're going to move forward, it's a really tough sell for me.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly, Dan. And I think in a bit of a way, I think that McDermott was kind of the scapegoat, so to speak, because I don't think it was McDermott who made sure that Josh Allen had Khalil Shakir. And as much as I love him, Dan, I'm an Oregon State grad myself, so of course I love Brandon Cooks. If you're asking Brendan, the replay official, I think he caught that ball before it was spun over and turned out to be an interception. But all that to say, I think that's just kind of the tough nature of the business sometimes, and it is what it is. And I will say this, I thought with his post, McDermott handled it extremely classy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was, always going to be, how he went out. And I think he did a lot of things for this Buffalo organization that really has put them in. It was really the catalyst to how Buffalo is in this place. When you think of what this team was before McDermott took over, and I think you kind of think of the foundational draft that he had. This was before Brandon Beane came in that had, Tre'Davious White, Matt Milano, a couple other really key pieces in there. So that really set the tone for what this Buffalo franchise has been over the past couple of years. And obviously, having Josh Allen does raise that ceiling quite a bit. So, hopefully you do have a couple more years of a prime Josh Allen, and that's what they're kind of hoping for to get to that peak that they haven't been able to get yet.
Catching up with Dan Pizzuta here on 620 Rip City Radio, and I want to talk a little bit about the Rams and the Bears, another overtime thriller in the divisional round. The Rams seem to just have a little bit more, but it was a really close game. I love the future of Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. And I have to ask right off the bat, Dan, what was going through your mind when Caleb Williams just kept going backwards and then spun around for about a quarter of a second and just launched that ball into the heavens before the TV camera could pan around and show us a wide-open Cole Kmet in the end zone?
Yeah, I think it was probably, as everyone else's reaction to it was oh no, oh my God. And I think it was just, it was one of those things that probably Caleb and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes can really pull off.
Right.
Because it goes down as a 14-yard touchdown pass. He was at the 40 and then threw it to the back corner of the end zone.
Yep.
I believe Next Gen Stats had it as 54 yards from hand to hand, which is just incredible. And the just kind of his body positioning on that. Obviously not how you draw it up, probably not what you would like him to try again in the same situation, but he is one of the talented guys who is going to be able to pull off a play like that.
It was just incredible because after that play, I'm sitting there watching the game with my buddy, and we look at each other and we're like, okay, how many guys in the NFL could actually do that? And it makes me kind of feel smart, Dan, because you just listed the only two guys that we thought could do that would be Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And we kind of went through, we're like, okay, I don't necessarily think that's something Joe Burrow could do. We maybe threw out like a Trevor Lawrence type, but there are so few quarterbacks. Like, for example, I don't think Lamar Jackson could have done that. And I think he's a tremendous player. It's just, it was incredible. And I think it kind of shows, like, the Rams got the win. Bears obviously get the loss, but long term, Ben Johnson's not going anywhere. Caleb Williams not going anywhere. I think that team's got a really exciting future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I like about this year's Bears team is there's still some clear things to work on that I think are very easily achievable as this relationship continues to grow between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. There were still plays where the down-to-down accuracy wasn't always there.
Sure.
And I think that is something that they can continue to work on. I think Ben Johnson did come into this with a little bit of like Jared Goff mentality of, I think his early in the preseason was like, we want 70% completions, and Caleb Williams is just never going to be that type of player, and I don't think you want him to be. So I think with a full season or full off season now to kind of calibrate after a year of working together, I think they're very achievable improvements that I think can bring this offense to another level again next year.
Yeah, and it's just exciting because, again, as we know, Dan, it's not like they're the only fan base, but I think there's been some fan bases that have been put through the misery index, and the Bears have to certainly be up there. And no disrespect to the team that made the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman at quarterback, 20 years ago or close to. But for the first time, Dan, I'm just about to turn 30 years old. Chicago hasn't had a franchise quarterback in my lifetime until now, which is just kind of crazy when you think about it that way.
I think there are many people much older than you, who could also say that.
Sure.
So, this feels like a very different type of Bears team, which is a lot of fun. And to have this much potential in what the quarterback and the head coach can do together, it's a very exciting time there.
Absolutely. Catching up with Dan Pizzuta here on 620 Rip City Radio. Dan, just a couple more questions for you. Appreciate your time. Let's talk about that Seahawks-Rams matchup. I think it's naive to say, like, do the Rams have a chance? Because the Rams obviously beat the Seahawks once this year, and then we're in an overtime thriller with them in their other game. But that factor of being at Lumen Field, I don't think weather's going to be too big of a factor here on the West Coast. It's not going to be unbelievably cold, probably not going to be unbelievably windy or rainy or windy either. Just pretty typical sunny and dry West Coast on the winter. So I'm curious, like, after the Rams got put through the ringer, and I'll admit, Dan, I had some doubts about the Rams, Southern California boys, going to play in frigid temperatures in Chicago. And I thought they kind of answered that bell. What's kind of your degree of confidence versus in a guy like Sean McVay, who's made a couple Super Bowls, been through the pains of a loss, been through the joys of a win, versus a coach in Mike McDonald who is still looking to get there for the first time as a head coach with a team that I think is probably better than the Rams, but this is where I think that chess match between McVay and McDonald is just going to be brilliant to watch.
Yeah, that's the part that makes this one really interesting, because for the first two games that the Rams have played in this playoffs, I've been a little, I don't want to know if I want to say disappointed, but a little just perplexed by Sean McVay a little bit, because these haven't been game plans that have really seemed to work until they kind of figure it out late in a game. But it's also weird to think about that in those two games. But then I feel better about them playing the Seahawks, because with the familiarity, they do know how to approach it. So I'm not sure there's going to be the same kind of disconnect where, they're either going to abandon the run or abandon some of their 13 personnel that they use so well in the back half of the regular season. So I do think the Rams are going to be able to approach this game better. Like you said, I do believe the Seahawks are going to be a better team. That defense is just really clicking so well right now. Just the way everyone is in the right spot and moves so quickly. And I think that has given the Rams a bit of an issue throughout the year. So it's just, it's one of those things where we've seen two pretty close games during the regular season. I would expect this to be pretty close again, kind of despite what we saw from these two teams coming out of last weekend.
Absolutely. And just one more thing I want to make a note of the Seahawks, Dan. And before I brought you on, I was kind of just mentioning how impressed I am with the Seahawks. And for me personally, I don't really have a true NFL team. I kind of root for players and coaches and those kind of things. But in my family, I have it from all angles, from the Seahawks, from my brother-in-law and sister, from my brother, so on and so forth, and my best friend for that matter. And, a part of me kind of looks back and I'm kind of like, I don't know how many other franchises could move off of an icon like Pete Carroll, nail the hire, and then a year and some change later, 2 years, whatever it is, 2 seasons later, be in one game away from the Super Bowl. I mean, I think this, beyond Mike McDonald and the strength of the team, which I think it's a very well put together team, I think the lion's share of the credit might need to go to John Schneider, man. I mean, his ability to build a team, identify the next leader, and make that tough decision to move on from Pete Carroll, obviously, and it's come up about as, all red in Vegas as you could ask for, Dan. Like the Seahawks have made just tremendously winning moves, and then you see some franchises in the NFL that can't make, one move right in a row. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the one thing that has been really impressive with Snyder over, really his entire tenure is he has not been afraid to make a move too early. And he would rather do that than be, a year too late. I think we saw that with Russell Wilson when Seattle moved on.
Good point.
I think a lot of other franchises probably would have given Wilson at least one more year before they decided to move on. And then you go back to Pete Carroll and Geno Smith. Also, the Geno Smith this past year, I think there probably would have been a lot of other teams that would have, and I was someone who would have been a proponent of re-signing Geno the way he was able to play. So the fact that they had moved off of him when they did, and we kind of saw what he did in Vegas with Pete Carroll this year. So to continually be looking ahead, not being afraid to make these moves earlier than I think other general managers, maybe without the same type of job security, would have been comfortable doing, for him to be making those moves and set up this franchise as it has. Yeah, that's been a very impressive piece. And then on top of bringing in all these other good players, especially when you see what they've done in the draft and how this team has been built, it's been just an exceptional job of building this team.
Yeah, it's absolutely impressive, and that's one of the things that has kind of been my big takeaway throughout Seattle in the regular season, and then now in the playoffs. And when you make a statement like they did against the 49ers. It just it deserved a closer look, too. Catching up with Dan Pizzuta. Just a couple more things for you, Dan, before we let you go. I appreciate your time. Kind of just want to switch gears and get your thoughts on some of the new head coaches settling in. Let's start with John Harbaugh in New York with Jackson Dart. How do you like that marriage?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously going to be a change because I think it is a positive sign for the Giants to go out, get someone who has the experience and kind of the way he is already kind of with the contract impasses that they had, that he wants to change some things in the building. I think that is a very good sign because I think the Giants for a very long time have been, we are the Giants, this is the way we do things.
Sure.
To get an outside voice, to have just kind of the leverage in his contract talks to be able to change some of that is very good. I think that'll be a positive for the Giants. I'm just going to be very interested in who he brings in as coordinators. If it is Todd Monken, he ends up coming over. I think I do like that fit quite a bit. Defensive coordinator is going to be very important because there's some talent on this defense. Obviously, the defensive line is very good. Anything behind the defensive line, I think there's still a lot of questions in. So I think who he brings in as coordinators are going to be as big of a piece of the success of this marriage as much as, John Harbaugh himself.
Okay. All right. Good breakdown. Let's go to the Titans and 49ers DC Robert Saleh. Now, obviously, it's a different situation than a couple years ago, but from, ask me why, or, ask me or tell me like I'm 5 years old, Dan, why is this any better of an organization than when Robert Saleh went to the Jets? Because in a lot of ways, the Titans have been a struggling organization too. Not nearly on the level of the Jets. That's kind of specific, but you kind of get what I'm getting at a little bit?
Yes. I think you could potentially think about that from, the ownership on down, and there's always been kind of a bit of a power struggle. They fired Mike Vrabel to kind of get a Mike Vrabel-like kind of head coach. So that I think it is a very long path to get to a very similar place. I think with Saleh, what I think the biggest change is there is a quarterback in place who I think has a lot of potential. And if you put the right system around him, that's something he's never had with the Jets. And I think that is it's still a lot on the quarterback, especially once that was Zach Wilson. When you go back and look at some of the things that Mike LaFleur was doing when he was the coordinator of that offense, there were things that were open. Like this offense could have worked if there was a better quarterback. And then I think when you have Saleh, he's going to be able to build a defense. And the Seattle game, notwithstanding, for the 49ers to, they weren't a good defense, but for them to have been able to hang in as many games as they did during this season with so many of their best players out.
Right.
It wasn't that they were just dealing with a lot of injuries. It was Fred Warner, Nick Bosa. That is going to completely change a defense. They were still able to do a lot of fun things schematically that helped keep them in games and win as much as they did. So I have a lot of trust in what Saleh is going to be able to do on the defensive side of the ball. And I think the quarterback and building around that, we're probably not going to see a huge year one improvement. I don't think the Titans are going to be some playoff team going into next season, but they also have the most cap space in the league. So I think this is very much a blank slate that that Saleh and Mike Borgonzi, the general manager, can kind of build together. So I think that is something that is much different than what the Jets were.
Perfect. And just a couple more here for you, Dan, before we let you go. The Dolphins hiring former Green Bay, D.C., and Boston College head coach Jeff Hafley. What do you think of Hafley's journey kind of working his way up to an NFL head coach after being a college head coach just a couple years ago?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that is going to come into kind of what Miami is going to be as a franchise in the next couple of years. I think this is going to be a bit of a reset there, especially when we've kind of figured out what they're going to do with Tua at quarterback, whether they, release him or trade him. I think it might be kind of tough to do that with his contract, but this is going to be kind of a multi-year rebuilding project. I think especially if you look at their cap, it's tough. So it's going to be a bit of a build. So to get Hafley in there, a guy who does have that college experience, I think this is going to end up being a younger roster over the next couple years. So to have someone like that build in. Obviously, you come in with a Green Bay general manager also. That's a team that has always, they've been the youngest team in the league for, I think, the past 4 years or so. So this is a team that's very much draft and develop. So I think you're going to get a guy who kind of has, the best of both worlds a little bit, coming into that situation.
And last but not least, one of the hires I think I'm keeping a close eye on, Kevin Stefanski to the Falcons. And the only reason I'm really excited about this is when Stefanski had a 1-2 running back punch like a Bijan Robinson and a Tyler Algier, like he did when they had Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt a handful of years ago in Cleveland. I've always kind of liked Kevin Stefanski. Just your quick thoughts on that, Dan.
Yeah, I'll be interested because Algier is going to be a free agent, but just Bijan Robinson behind an offensive line that has been good with Bill Callahan coming in to be the offensive line coach. That is Bijan Robinson, like Offensive Player of the Year 2026. Sounds pretty good. Yeah, so I think he is going to be able to, build an offense there that's going to get the best out of a lot of these players. Keeping Jeff Ulbrich there as the defensive coordinator, I think that helps also because that defense was doing some fun things throughout the year with their new defensive line, some of their pass rushers. So that is one that I think is going to be pretty exciting and I think can have results, depending on who the quarterback is going into next season.
I couldn't agree more. And Dan, honestly, I could talk ball with you for an hour. We're out of time. I got to let you run. But thank you so much for joining me on this edition. I look forward to talking to you again next time, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Dan Pizzuta, you can catch his work at Yahoo Sports, many other places. I love talking with Dan, man. It's always a great football conversation. We're going to take a quick break here on the Rip City Drive. When we come back, we'll be wrapping up, putting a bow tie on the show. You got the Rip City Drive. Welcoming you back into the Rip City Drive here on a Tuesday afternoon. Is it already that time already? Taking it to the streets, already starting. It's been, man, I feel like I could go on this for 3 more hours. And guess what the best part is, folks? You're back with me again tomorrow. Another day of Brendan Slaughter on the mic tomorrow. Very excited to talk to our guest tomorrow. We're going to catch up with, actually, let's go ahead and make sure we have that perfectly dialed in. Little on the fly notes here. So tomorrow we will have Keith Smith on the program talking some NBA. We'll also have Ryan Harlan from Beaver's Edge joining us at 4:20. Then Sean Hyken, Blazers insider, Rip City radio insider, Rose Garden Report author, going to be joining us for the entire 5 o'clock hour tomorrow. So very, very excited for the show we got on tap tomorrow. We're going to be talking some more Blazers, some more, obviously, NBAs. We're getting into it, the NFL, much, much more. I'm excited to get Keith Smith on the program, talk some national Blazers thoughts with him as well, get the kind of national lens of how the Blazers are putting things together. And once again, today, big shout out to Travis Demers, Casey Holdall, and Dan Pizzuta for joining us. All 3 interviews were spectacular. It was great to talk some Blazers with the guys at 3:20 and 4:20, and then obviously some football with Dan Pizzuta to close it out. A perfect Tuesday. I hope everyone has a great rest of your night, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good night, Rip City. Test, test, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, testing, 1, 2. Test. Testing, 1, 2. Test. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Welcoming you back into the Blazers wrap up. Welcoming you back to the Blazers wrap up. I don't get it. It's not working the way I need it to work. It's not working the way I need it to work. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. 1 2. Testing 1 2. 1 2. 1 2. Welcoming you back into the Blazers wrap up, second segment of the afternoon. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Welcoming you back into the Blazers wrap up here on a Thursday afternoon. Brendan Slaughter here with you. Hope everyone is having a great day so far. Excited to welcome on our next guest. We'll be talking some Blazers here in segment number 2. Casey Holdall. Great. Welcoming you back into the Blazers wrap up here on a Thursday afternoon. Hope everyone's having a great day so far. Very excited to welcome back to the Welcoming you back into the Blazers wrap up here on a Thursday afternoon. Host Brendan Slaughter here with you. Hope everyone's having a great day so far. Excited to be back talking with you guys. Some more Blazers action coming up. Very pleased to welcome to the Blazers wrap up Portland Trailblazers digital host Casey Holdall. Casey, appreciate you joining us on this edition. How's it been getting to have some off time ahead of these next matchups with the Portland Trailblazers? I don't think. Welcoming you back into the fudge. God, this is crap. 3, 2, 1. Welcoming you back into the Blazers wrap up here on a Thursday afternoon. Host Brendan Slaughter here with you guys. Hope you're having a great day so far. Excited to keep rolling with our awesome conversation of the Blazers, talking about their hot stretch of play as of late, being a 500 team. And now, very excited to welcome to the Blazers wrap up our first guest on the Blazers wrap up, Casey Holdall, Trailblazers digital reporter. Casey, how are things and how is it getting to have a little bit of off time before the Trailblazers' next matchups later this week? 3, 2. That was Portland Trailblazers digital reporter Casey Haldell joining us on the Blazers wrap-up. We'll go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be breaking down what's next for your Portland Trailblazers on the schedule. Keep it locked to 620 Rip City Radio. Okay, that's not going to work. So why are we doing it like that? I don't really understand what we're doing here. Why does that need to be the case? Why does it need to not? It's just like, okay, enough.